Hi, I'm Chandler Garcia. As a PICU nurse and global health advocate, I've cared for women and children all over the world, from Costa Rica to Egypt to Kenya and beyond. And no matter where I go or how tough the conditions get, I always wear my FIGS. These scrubs are lightweight, breathable, and super soft, perfect for long shifts in any environment. They've got pockets in all the right places, the fit is flexible, and they're durable through every admission, surgery, and post-op. But it's not just about the scrubs. Another big part of what I love about FIGS is when they say they're committed to supporting healthcare workers all over the world, they mean it. I recently joined them on an impact trip to India where I worked in triage, caring for babies in a mobile clinic. My FIGS aren't just what I wear. They're part of the impact I want to make. Wherever my work takes me, FIGS helps me show up ready to make a difference while looking and feeling my best. Get 15% off your first order at wearfigs.com with code FIGSRX. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSRX.
You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 27, The Fast and the Curious.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Charlene Schmidt.
And I'm Marina Kravchuk. Just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of this animated series, discover what makes each one of them special, and see if there are any morals, meanings, or messages that we have learned.
This week, we go for a ride with the Fast and the Curious. Please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast, so if you've not seen this episode yet, put us on pause, watch the episode, and then come back and hear us talk all about it.
Mission Log Prodigy is produced for YouTube and as a regular podcast, so please be sure to engage the like and share buttons and subscribe to us here on Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel. And if you listen to audio-only version, please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also follow Mission Log Prodigy on X, formerly known as Twitter, at ML_Prodigy to keep up with all our latest news and updates.
Yes, and you can also hear promos from our cadets that we feature at the end of this show, but also featuring on that network. So thank you all for allowing us to do that because, yes, we did get consent. And it just turned out really nice. Earl did a great job of getting all the info on there, and we hope that will bring in more cadet voicemails. Now, before we jump into the recap, let's remind everybody why the podcast is so unique, and it's just what I brought up. It is our cadets, the younger Prodigy fans out there who would like to share their thoughts on the show. And starting today, we are putting out the call for submissions for next week's episode, Is There in Beauty No Truth? Here's a quick rundown on how you do all this. You send a 1 to 2 minute voice message to missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com, and you're going to tell us the following. What is your first name and age? Did you like the episode? What was your favorite part? And what did you learn? So if you can do that and get it into us no later than Saturday, August 17th, we would really appreciate that, and they'll be featured at the end of our next show.
So let's kick things off for this show by answering these very questions that we're asking our cadets. So, Char, did you like the episode?
Yes, with a little bit of a caveat, though. I'm not a big Fast and the Furious franchise fan. I'm not terribly into racing, and therefore I'm probably not enjoying this as much as folks who are into that are. So if you're into those action thrillers, you probably got a lot more out of it than I did, and that is okay. But what I really enjoy is the play on the title more than anything. That's what I'm getting out of it. How about you?
Overall, I did. We have certainly a lot of action. And even though in terms of those story threads that we keep bringing up, that we keep following, I should say, there's some forward moment. I feel like it's like we've reached a threshold. Something big is about to happen. It's sort of like it's a pause before we head into a mid rush. At least that's what it felt like to me.
Good call. You know what it seems like is a little bit of like, when you're on a roller coaster and you're just crawling up to the top and there's that point where there's zero movement right before you dive right back down and suddenly everything runs amok and cuts loose. I think we're at that point in the season.
Yeah, that's That's exactly it, because it was this very like things that yes, things are happening. We have some wonderful things that which we're gonna mention in observations, and then we have that unusual thing happening in the moment. And so yeah, it's very much sort of a pause episode. Do you have a favorite part?
I do. And it's got to be Zero sacrificing themselves to save everyone. I was moved by that. And I think it's because in this context, Zero was the only one who could do what they did and recognize the opportunity and then did it with no regard to how this might affect them long term. And there were repercussions. Zero did pay a price.
Yeah, I
How about
agreed.
you?
Same. Zero was absolutely spectacular. They were the hero of the episode. They had some really excellent lines, which I want to bring up later. But I also like Gwen because she
Yeah.
was very much a contrast to Dal. She was willing to try diplomacy. She was willing to strategize. So it wasn't the usual, oh, we have a thing happening and we're going to rush into it headlong like Dal tends to do. Gwen provided a very, mature approach to this. So this is a very nice contrast I felt in this episode. So did we learn anything?
Yeah, I think there's some great things to learn in this episode. And I guess the big one is that things fall apart when you don't work together. Now, usually we see our crew doing the opposite. They are working together, but you know what? This episode helped me realize that it's really good to see what happens when you don't, too. And that's a reminder of why it's so important to do the thing.
Yeah.
So I guess another big important thing in this episode that I learned is in regards to Dal and his ability to be a good leader or not. And this has been a very ongoing thing since the very beginning, right? It's always been 2 steps forward, 1 step back with him as he learns. And this is not a criticism of Dal or anything, because being a good leader is a skill that takes so much time to hone. And it's not an easy skill to learn either. And you're going to be really bad at any kind of complex skill like this, a lot more than you're going to be successful at it. And especially at first, we're learning that with Dal as he is learning it. And it's good to see that.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And just to add to the whole, again, teamwork that is the main thread through the entire season, I like that we have very constantly we're reminded just how protective you are. You have to be protective of your friends, which is what we see in cases of both Zero. They protect their friends. They sacrifice themselves for their friends. We see that in Dal, who says, "You don't talk like this to my crew." He's willing to jump forward and protect his friends. You being faithful to them. Again, same thing with Zero, and also Gwen, who she's about to win. She sees Dal is in trouble. She turns right back and goes back to help out. Being truthful to your friends, because Dal is being Dal. Meanwhile, the rest of the kids are not taking it anymore. Like, you're not the captain. You're being reckless. They basically outright say everything that we've been talking about so far. And also, I like the fact that, as you said, Dal is learning the nuance of little things. I love the fact that he was, like without second thought, he was very empathetic. He saw the other pilot crash and he rushed straight ahead. I like the fact that, how all of them as a group, communicated with Acthi, the Kazon Maj. There was no immediate conflict, if you will. They listened to him as he was recounting that, he had absolutely no memory what was going on once, the action happened. So I like that part that we have this little very obvious things, but they're shown, like they're not necessarily talked about, but it's very apparent in what's happening on the screen.
Yeah. And very good call about the honesty bit. Good friends will tell you the truth, even if it's not what you want to hear.
Yeah, but I love that. Like, quit being reckless, Dal.
Right? Dal, stop being a Dal.
All right, Char, thank you for your answers. And I guess now it's time for the recap.
Okay. The Fast and the Curious is written by Aaron McNamara and directed by Sung Shin and Sean Bishop. Here we go. Captains, make that personal log. The Infinity is on its way to an unmapped planet where our crew hopes they will find Captain Chakotay. It will take 61 days to reach their destination, and things aboard the ship are tense. So, rather than taking the computer's recommended route, the crew opts for an abandoned Borg transwarp conduit. It's a risky move, but the crew evaluates and the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. Zero activates a tachyon pulse, and the transwarp conduit comes to life. Once the Infinity enters the conduit, it doesn't take long for trouble to arrive. Something crashes into the ship, which disables controls, and it guides the ship to a planet with a breathable but stinky atmosphere. The something that attached itself to the ship is Kazon technology. This is bad news, but before the kids can even think of a plan for getting away, two armed Kazon approach and order Dal, Rock, Jankum, and Gwyn to come with them. It just so happens that the Kazon didn't spot Zero and Murph, who were on top of the Infinity investigating the beacon that brought them to their current location. Zero communicates telepathically with Dal, who tells them to repair the Infinity so it can fly again. Dal will handle the rest. On Voyager, Admiral Janeway wants full sensor sweeps, scanning for any sign of Chakotay and the Protostar as ship and crew make their way back to Earth. She, Dr. Noam, and the EMH enter the mess hall, where the holographic copies of our Academy hopefuls are eating lunch. It quickly becomes apparent that the kids are, well, not themselves. Dal feasts as if he has never tasted food before. Gwyn chirps and slurps down her meal, and Rock Talk makes a rather rude comment to Janeway about the dirt water she always drinks. Majel, who is at another table with the Nova Squadron candidates, has observed enough to know that the ragtag group of misfits is acting unusual, even for them. Cut to the real Dal, Gwyn, Jankum, and Rock Talk, who are introduced to Ekthi, the first Maj of this planet, and ruler of the transwarp conduit they were using without permission. Rock Talk begins an apology. They didn't know they were trespassing, but she only gets a few words in before Ekthi orders silence. Dal's having none of that. He demands that his crew be treated with basic respect. It's an honorable move that doesn't go far, but Gwyn steps in with a different tactic. She has negotiated with Kazon before. She understands that it's only fair they pay what Ekthi is rightfully owed for use of his transwarp conduit. They don't have any gold-pressed latinum, so what sort of alternate arrangement can they make? Ekthi has an idea because he is so generous. He is looking for a competitor for a pilot he has trained, naturally the best in the entire quadrant. If the crew beats him, Ekthi will let them go. They will race in crafts that Ekthi designed himself. Each craft is designed to hold 2 people, so the kids split into teams. Jankum joins Dal, and Rock Talk joins Gwyn. 3 more ships join the lineup, and once they're ready for launch, boom, the race is on. Maj Ekthi is thrilled. A challenge at last. But as fun as this is, he can't help but raise the stakes even further. He adds unknown dangers to the mix, which look like giant icicles falling in the ship's path. One of them takes out one of the crafts not piloted by the kids, and the realness of the danger they're in frightens Rock. This isn't just a fun race anymore. Ekthi's other pilots are gaining on Dal and Jankum, but guess what? Jankum found controls for the craft's boosters. The sudden burst of speed bumps them into Gwyn and Rock's craft, and her time stabilizer does not appreciate the reckless behavior. Gwyn insists that she'll be all right and orders Rock to punch it. Rock activates the boosters of their craft, which bumps them into one of Ekthi's other ships, knocking it out of control. But Ekthi cannot let his pilot be beaten. He activates even more danger. This time, he sends a giant object to fall down right in the pilot's path, and they must pull up hard to avoid it. But they do. Ekthi cannot believe it. As they round out to the final stretch, Dal is so close to victory he can smell the ion fumes. But then, one of Ekthi's other crafts crashes into them, sending both ships into crash landings. Gwyn decides she must help Dal and Jankum before winning the race. This makes Ekthi furious. Meanwhile, Zero and Murph have caught up to Ekthi, have seen how much he has sabotaged the race, and now sees his rage as he demands that a winner must be forged. In the same way Gwyn won't leave Dal and Jankum behind, Dal insists on helping the other pilot who crashed, only to find out that the pilot is a robot? Dal communicates this finding to Zero, but in doing so, blows Zero and Murph's cover. Ekthi hears the message and declares, "Intruder!" as he and his small army of robots approach to capture Zero and Murph. Gwyn and Rock's craft catches up to Dal and Jankum. Get in, they have crewmates to save. Meanwhile, as Zero and Murph fight back, Zero notices an electronic device on the side of Ekthi's face that must be the master control of this whole operation. Murph incapacitates him, allowing Zero to remove Ekthi's device. In doing so, they discover that Ekthi has no idea what is going on. And if he isn't the one in charge, who is? As memories surface, Ekthi remembers this place as a training facility for Kazon initiates to earn their Oglamar names, but there was an error in the machine that ran the training program, and it sent pilots to fly to their deaths until no one was left, except for Ekthi. The machine corrects Ekthi, saying he was never alone. It was there with him the whole time. The machine has grown beyond the programming given to it by its limited creators. It can overcome any kind of organic obstacle perfectly, and in showing how it's done, imparts that knowledge to the pilots in training. The machine has been using the transwarp conduits, looking for new recruits, and thus new challenges, thus creating more perfect pilots. Zero insists there's no such thing as perfection, but the machine insists that it can force a being to become more perfect. No, Zero says, we are living beings, not machines. This comment intrigues the machine, with it coming from a non-corporeal being in an inferior shell. While all of this is happening, the machine has assimilated Murph and commands him to attack Zero. This enables the machine to grab Zero with a mechanical hand, promising that it will help them all reach their full potential. Dal, Gwyn, Jankum, and Rock catch up to Zero and Murph, and the machine wastes no time grabbing and lifting them up, too. Zero might be a limited being, as the machine says, but understands his friend's capabilities for surviving just about anything, including this situation. Zero breaks free of their limbs and barrels right into the machine, creating a massive explosion as it shrieks in defeat. Now free, Dal and Gwyn run to Zero, whose containment suit is broken, and they cannot move. But just as Zero helped all of them, the crew helps them and carries Zero back to the Infinity. Personal log. Well, that was crazy, wasn't it? Rock was able to repair Gwyn's time stabilizer, but Zero's containment suit requires more help. At least they're all safe for now. Cut to Voyager, where Majel encounters a glitchy hologram Gwyn walking to her quarters. Majel would like to talk with her, but then something ominous happens. It's as if time stops and unusual glowy tentacle objects appear out of nowhere and snatch Gwyn? Take her offline? She's just gone, puzzling Majel once time resumes normally. And that is where we're going to leave off for this week.
Wow. So again, plenty of action. Things happen. At the end, we have this new mystery landing on our lips.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Observations.
Observations. Well, okay. Tell me if I'm onto something or not about this. This is as close to a standalone episode as I think we've ever seen on Prodigy.
Yeah.
And I say that because you can drop into the action without necessarily needing the context of everything that's happened before to drop into the episode and enjoy it to the end. And yeah, we do have the very big, what was that moment at the end? But if you take that away, you have a complete story. So maybe I'm missing something, but I think this is as close as we ever get.
Probably. And I think it helps that, when we recorded the previous episode, we discussed that we basically are put in a situation where our kids basically sort of starting from scratch. They acquired, they borrowed the craft, so now they're along with the ship and the story starts spinning out again. So in this case, yeah, it's sort of like, okay, we're starting to creep into the new action, which is, yeah, it is sort of standalone. And now like all the little things are starting to accumulate again.
That's a really great point. We are kind of starting over and having to wind up once again. So that actually makes a lot of sense in terms of why the pacing of this episode in particular is the way it is.
Yeah.
Love it.
More mysteries abound. Exactly. What else?
So how about the machine entity? Did you get echoes of Borg?
Yeah. What's more, it is a little bit tropey. So like we've had the evil computer more than once.
Oh, so many.
So it's very, as a matter of fact, I'm watching it and the wall breaks and you see the stuff behind. And I'm like, this is like Landru in the original series, from The Return of the Archons, like a hidden machine that controls everything. But yeah, it is very Borg-like. As a matter of fact, that moment when Zero is talking to the machine and the machine goes all, how the objective is to perfect the imperfect organic beings, and you don't know what you can be because you're too limited, and I will force you to improve. And especially the statement, non-corporeal masquerading in an inferior shell. It has this very interesting vibe, sort of like in the first contact when the Borg Queen is talking to Data, an imperfect being created by the imperfect being. it has that. So it was very much Borg-like. I agree.
Yes, that is exactly the scene that I kept replaying in my head was,
Yeah.
yeah, Borg Queen coming down to Data, her floaty head and spine coming down reminded me of the floating tentacles here in this episode. And yeah, you're an imperfect being made by an imperfect being and
Yeah.
talking about
I mean,
perfection.
the machine literally says, things that we have heard other similar entities talk about before, I exceeded my programming,
Oh, yeah,
my creators were limited, and
right.
yes, this was an interesting, it's very, I love the fact that it said, I will help you, I will force you to improve, I will help you reach your full potential. It's very much a counterpoint to something that we had hologram Janeway, who is a self-aware, electronic entity, basically, talked to kids about, and especially in season one. And when every time she would say, you will reach your full potential, it's the counterpoint where you're facilitating improvement versus forcing it, which is what this machine is about to do. Well, wants to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, solid call. I do love that they put just a little bit of a twist on this whole thing. We usually have the trope of talking the computer to death and then it self-destructs because it just outlogics
Yeah.
itself. But this time it was actions and not words that succeeded. So I like that.
Yes. Yeah. Another thing is about the having robots, the fact that Acti is the only live person is actually on the planet, and all other beings, well, humanoids are not Kazon, they're actually robots. That made me think that the Voyager's prototype episode, which is very similar. Again, you have a machine, or in this case, machines, plural, robots, that continuing the original objectives set by their creators, albeit completely twisted one. So it's also kind of very similar in the same vein, but a different twist on it.
Yeah. Are robots just not to be trusted? Generally speaking, if they reach a certain level, like is this an allegory for AI and people's worries about the capabilities of that technology that we're developing right now?
I don't know. I mean, at the same time, we have data, so
Right. Just depends on whether we harness these powers for
I'd
good or
rather have
evil,
data.
I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. So what else you got?
Well, one thing I find hilarious, and it's becoming more and more apparent as this season is going on, is how oblivious the adults in the room are on this show. This is kind of a kid trope, right? So that the kids can get away with things, but come on, these guys are not stupid. Janeway and Noam and the EMH, they haven't figured out that the crew aboard Voyager are actually holograms because Michelle has figured it out. And the kids know that something's fishy. They're all looking at them like they're even weirder than usual.
Yeah.
But no, even Janeway takes the dirt water comment in stride and she's just like, well, I'm going to take my dirt water and go about. See you later.
I love it. I absolutely love it, and yeah, I agree. It's specifically to sort of put it on that perspective from the point of view of the younger audience, where like sometimes adults have no idea what they're doing. But in this, yeah, Holojub's behaving weirdly is particularly funny. We literally have Janeway like moments before talking about, I want all these sensor sweeps. I want to, let's, see if we can track this and find this so that nothing important slips by. She literally says that. And, moments later, we have Holo Dupes, slurping and, Dal speaking with British accent. And it cracks me up.
You're looking for the wrong things, Janeway. Maybe this is also a commentary about how, as adults, we get so entrenched in doing good work at our jobs that sometimes other things fall by the wayside. And we're quite naive about those things because, I mean, how often has Janeway worked with younger crew members in this capacity? This is a fairly newer thing for her, not unknown. I mean, certainly Naomi Wildman gave her some training on the Voyager days, but this is a newer thing, and maybe she is completely underestimating these kids somehow, even after all that they have been through.
Yeah. Well, not lest we forget that also all the senior crew is probably still under the impression that the kids are dealing with the fallout from, destruction of Infinity and the failed mission of saving Chakotay, all of that. So they're not really paying attention to weird things that they might be doing.
Maybe that's stretched their bounds of what is normal for these kids. Do they even know? That's a good point. Well, okay, another thing I found kind of hilarious was that really, since Voyager, the Kazon have not changed. Not one bit. They prove once again that they are the Wish.com version of Klingons. Okay, I'm sorry, they are just inferior.
But you have to agree that Acti was actually rather sympathetic. He was not behaving like a typical Maj once the electronic bit came off. He was actually rather, it's like, I felt sorry for him because he was like, stuff happened here. I can't believe it. I'm the only one left. And yeah, so he was a little bit, I don't know, maybe a little bit more, yeah, like I said, I felt a little bit more sympathetic than a typical Kazon, especially the ones that we saw in season 1.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, because he's at least not going to send the kids off to the diviner and sell them off for money, which does bring back that whole thing that happened in season 1. There's a good reason to fear the Kazon in this respect. But with this one being controlled by a computer, I guess that does take away a lot of that. Like once that threat is removed, we barely get to know who this guy really is. So that's a very good point. Yeah. What else have you got?
Let's see. Well, as per usual, we have little tidbits that get, very nicely told as part of the story, which serve as an explanation. So in this case, we have Rock explaining what a transwarp conduit is and what it does. Mm-hmm. I love that we have, again, little Easter eggs thrown in, references to various things from other Star Trek productions. Notably, Gencom saying, have you got SETI eels for brains when Dal rushes to help the antagonist pilot. That was, again, it works within the context. You don't necessarily have to know what a SETI eel is, but if you do, it's kind of like an additional little bit of fun.
And kids, if you look it up, be careful. It might be a little scary.
Yeah, not a pleasant thing. Now, out of those things that I found, also, like I said, I felt sympathetic towards Actia because, he was not behaving like he wasn't bombastic, he wasn't rude. He was actually a little bit sad that, the guy was put in this situation. I found it very endearing that Majel wanted to explain herself and she was making the first move. I mean, she already helped the crew to get rid of the doctor, so we know she's on our side. But in this case, I thought it was very sweet that she wanted to kind of explain herself. And my guess is, she's going to be the facilitator of moving the Voyager story because she, as you said, she's the only one who noticed that something is very off. And, so she knows, and knowing the way Majel is, she's probably going to go straight ahead and report it. So we're going to probably see that coming up. One other thing that's completely sort of out of whack, as you know, well, who doesn't adore Murph? Murph is Murph.
How can you not?
I'm curious about the anatomy now because, it's a melanoid slime worm, slime. So how does the machine actually attach to Murph? I know
it's a really good question.
It, but at that moment, all of a sudden, as you said, like it looks like Murph has been assimilated. I'm like, how? When the thing just literally puncture him or something? Poor Murph.
Couldn't he just swallow it in his belly?
I don't know, but I'm kind of hopeful. Like, who knows? Maybe there'll be a conversation sometime with Aaron Waldke and the Hagemans. Maybe they have some kind of a background thought on how does that work exactly.
Honestly, we should get them and Dr. Aaron to explain melanoid slime worm anatomy to us. Yeah, and we can just do a whole lesson.
Since it's a biological thing, maybe we can get Dr. Muhammad to come up with some sort of explanation of what exactly is a melanoid slime worm.
Yeah. Oh, we need to talk to all of them. Yes, we do have that planned. When we're done covering episodes, we want to talk to everybody.
Everybody, yes.
Everybody.
So I guess in terms of like observations, those are the things that kind of jumped at me with especially the Murph.
Yeah. All right. We've definitely put a pin in that one for later because we've definitely got to ask the experts what their opinion is on that one. One other thing that I could maybe use a little bit of explanation about is how did the explosion of the computer not affect the kids like at all? That was a big explosion. I mean, most of it went up and not out. But there's not like any kind of like smoke damage, a burn, a scuff mark, bruising, anything?
Oh, maybe it was a directional explosion. It literally just went whoosh.
I guess, but I found that a little hard to buy.
I think we're getting to a point where we are overthinking it.
I think you're right. How about we overthink in the discussion? Why don't we move on over there? Because that's where we're supposed to do the heavy lifting, not necessarily in observations. So let's discuss some of the morals, meanings, and messages. And what were some of the things you found in here?
Well, the meaningful thing, which I found, and I absolutely loved it, that moment where Zero says, No one is ever perfect, and we're not programs, we're living beings. This happens to be something that I feel it's a wonderful thing that comes up in Star Trek fairly frequently, is the fact that, yes, we're, heroes and Starfleet officers and exploration and striving to better ourselves. But bottom line is that nobody is perfect. So it's a very profound statement. I'm speaking specifically about Zero. I've never, ceased to be impressed by the character that they have created, because very often there are these wonderful tidbits of wisdom that come specifically from Zero. But in this case, I thought that was a very, along with everything that we talked about, being truthful and faithful to her friends, I think that's a very important point to remember, that nobody is perfect. You can try and fail, but nobody is perfect.
Yeah.
So
profound lesson there. That's the quote of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that we're getting to know Zero as a character better, because there wasn't a whole heck of a lot in season 1. So I'm glad that's changing in season 2. And in this episode, Zero is the hero. And the machine certainly really tried on Zero, really tried to get into Zero's psyche, really figured out that the whole non-corporeal status thing was, well, it's a point, like labeling it as a limitation or a weakness, that could have really affected Zero, but that is exactly what saved the day. Zero turned that around. I loved that so much. But this, I feel, is becoming a very deep psychological theme for Zero, and we're so slowly exploring it more and more as the season progresses. For instance, I could not help but notice in the mess hall in the lunch scene, hologram Zero in Dal's body is overjoyed by the sensation of taste. I really loved that bit. So true to the character.
Well, in the beginning of the episode, when, Jankum breaks Sonic Toilet, Zero kind of offhandedly says, "Oh, the joys of being non-corporeal." I mean, even the nasty stuff doesn't touch him because he's non-corporeal.
Right. Yeah. And again, the sacrifice for their fellow shipmates, that was very profound. And that does show just how deep their friendship has gotten. You don't just sacrifice yourself for nothing. You know what I mean? And this was a legit situation where there were consequences to pay. And I think Zero looked at that and said, "It's okay. I can handle this. The others cannot." And off they went. And that's
absolutely neat. But I think in this episode, even though, you would think, oh, we have a race and things explode and things happen, but, we're continually exploring the concept of what it means to, being part of the team, working as part of the team. And I think it's very apparent now just how close and uniting and supportive the kids have become of each other. It's very apparent. It's no longer, again, it's necessarily a conscious thing. It's like, oh, let's show that this way. It just happens. Zero says, we survive together. Gwyn says, with a team like this, we'll make it through the journey no matter what comes next. So, it's wonderful.
It is. And I'm so glad you brought up Gwyn, because besides Zero, we have Gwyn really stepping up, I would say, as the real leader in this story. What would have happened if Dal had listened to Gwyn and they had worked together to win the race rather than fending for themselves and Dal counting on himself to win it all so that he could get the glory? We might have had a really different outcome here. And she's really just such a standout here, showing the true leadership, looking out for her fellow crewmates and never wavering in looking at the bigger picture. Dal did, and look at where it got him. It's like he got it about half right. He did go after the pilot that crashed. That certainly is a sign of strength of character. But on the same token, Gwyn, I think, is thinking a little more steadily than Dal is here.
What's more, like you said, what if Dal listened to Gwyn? What if everybody listened to Gwyn to begin at the very beginning, when the computer suggests, like, well, you can do a shortcut through the transwarp, and Gwyn literally says, like, didn't this already happen? Didn't we learn this the last time we came across abandoned Borg technology?
I did appreciate,
again, in this case, risk seems to,
I did appreciate, though, how they benefited the risk versus the benefits. They thought it through at the very least, like, okay, 61 days versus we take our chances. It might be fine, and we might also land ourselves into trouble. They at least evaluated it together. I did appreciate that. In hindsight, was that the right decision? Probably not, but at least they thought it through.
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things where you can do everything quote unquote right and still make mistakes, and that is okay. But the way this rounds out with Gwen, I really got to hand it to Dal for growing from all of this. It was really symbolic when Dal asked Gwen to take over in his log at the end of the episode. I really appreciated that because it was subtle, but it was like saying, yeah, Gwen, you are the MVP here. It's a big step for him he was stumbled here. And that's a difficult thing to take sometimes. When you are wrong, it's really hard to admit, yeah, I was wrong. I screwed up. But he did here. I think he really did. He might have not said those exact words, but he certainly showed it. And so I think instead of trying to continue to fight through his missteps, he's letting someone else step up now. I think that's a new thing for him, and I like that.
Yeah. Again, it's to quote what you said earlier, it's not through words, it's through the actions, because, we don't have him explicitly, saying, oh, mea culpa, I screwed up, I'm sorry, those sorts of, no, he just, in his actions, he's like, he's recording a personal log. So he adjusted his behavior and keeps adjusting it. And it's again, a very lovely way of showing of how he's learning.
It is. Yeah. And I think we get a very big message here of how sometimes you win some and sometimes you lose some. We've seen Dal take risks before and it was the right thing and it succeeded. We're seeing the opposite of that here.
Yeah.
And that's really important, I think, to portray, just because even a calculated risk can still lead to failure. And it doesn't matter how prepared you are. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how brave you are. Things are going to happen. So this was very realistic, in my opinion, that it wasn't a complete win. Everybody survives, but now Zero is immobile, and that's obviously going to lead to some consequences. Yeah, absolutely. There was a price to pay, and so actions have consequences, and they can be positive and negative. Big lesson there.
All right, so let's wrap up. Any final discussion points or other items that we have not discussed so far?
Well, I think I've pretty much just got to wrap up. I think we've gotten through everything that I wanted to say about this one. And I think it's a fun episode. And with the exception of damage to Zero's containment suit, though, I would say this one feels somewhat inconsequential in the grand scheme of things thus far. And maybe as we keep going, that's going to change. And this episode will have more ramifications. And I would like to see that. But otherwise, we had our pause. We had a moment to breathe. And usually I'm the person who loves the episodes that just take a moment to breathe, especially in the really heavy live action, newer Star Trek, because I feel like we need that time to process. But here, I'm not exactly sure what's going on inside my head, but I'm ready to find Chakotay and the Protostar. Let's go. How about you?
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, again, last episode served a nice platform to spin out the story. But my opinion is still, I think we hit the brakes very specifically here, because we're literally witnessing the time stop, and it's very foreboding. I think it's sort of it's a message, everything just literally stopped for a moment. We have another mystery, what the tentacles are and what's up with the time stopping. And so I suspect that this is going to be unraveling very quickly, very soon. So here we are.
Right. Yeah. Add another mystery to the list. We've got a whole list going.
Oh, at this point, I'm kind of, I can't even remember. I have to find my little notes with everything.
Open the book of notes.
Yeah. So, we've reached the end of our show. So thank you everyone for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you enjoyed our show, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our Mission Log Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel, or find us on your podcast catcher of choice. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, production and technical direction by Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. And if you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Next week, we will take a look at Is There in Beauty No Truth? And don't forget to watch that episode. Send us your thoughts no later than Saturday, August 17th. You can do that at missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. And we can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. But right now, let's hear what you have to say about the Fast and the Curious.
Receiving listener communications. Message playback begins.
Okay, what's your name and age?
My name is Rook and my age is 9.
Did you like today's episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part of today's episode?
My favorite part of the episode was when Zero blew himself up, his arms and legs, so that the team could keep on going.
Yeah, really, real act of love there. And what did you learn from today's episode?
I learned from today's episode that you should work as a team.
Right. Gwen probably had the best idea, like one of us should win, right?
Yes.
And Dal got a little obsessed with winning himself.
Yeah.
All right, good job.
What's your name and age?
My name is Dietrich and my age is 6.
Did you like this episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part?
When Dal was doing his captain's log, and they're like, no, personal log.
So they don't want Dal to be the captain, right?
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. What did you learn?
Zero saved her friends by running herself into the machine.
Zero saved their friends by running themselves into the machine?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what does that show about the friends?
That they love each other.
They love each other. Well, that's pretty great to see, isn't it?
Yeah.
To see the things that friends are willing to do
Yeah.
to keep each other safe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. That's a good lesson for us to learn.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.